In January 2019, a company called WeWork was valued at $47 billion. It was one of the most valuable startups in American history. Its founder, Adam Neumann, had convinced some of the smartest investors on earth that he was building the next Amazon. 9 months later, the company nearly collapsed. Neumann was fired. The valuation fell from $47 billion to under $8 billion, an 83% drop in under 90 days. And here is the part that will make your jaw drop. Adam Neumann, the man who drove the company into the ground, walked away with $1.7 billion. This is the story of how one man convinced the world his co-working space company was worth more than Boeing, Ford, and Twitter combined. And what happened when reality finally showed up. Let's start with the actual business, because at its core, the WeWork concept was not crazy. 2010, New York City. Adam Neumann, an Israeli entrepreneur in his early 30s, and his co-founder Miguel McKelvey had a simple idea. Take large commercial office buildings, sign long-term leases on them, renovate them into beautiful, flexible workspaces, then rent out individual desks and private offices on short, flexible terms to startups, freelancers, and small businesses. It was essentially subletting, something landlords had done for decades. But Neumann added something crucial: design, community, and story. WeWork offices were stunning. Exposed brick, living walls, craft beer on tap, the energy of a startup in every corner. And Neumann told a story that made the business sound like a religion. He did not call WeWork a real estate company. He called it a community company, a consciousness company, a physical social network. He said WeWork's mission was to, quote, elevate the world's consciousness for a co-working space company. But in 2010, the startup world was in love with big visions. And Neumann could sell a vision better than almost anyone alive. The first WeWork opened in Soho, Manhattan in 2011. It filled up almost immediately, then the second, then the 10th, then the 100th. By 2017, WeWork was operating in 50 cities across 15 countries, and the valuations kept climbing. To understand how WeWork got to $47 billion, you need to understand one man, Masayoshi Son. Son is the CEO of SoftBank, a Japanese technology conglomerate. In 2016, he raised a $100 billion investment fund called the Vision Fund, the largest private equity fund in history. And Son had a philosophy: find the future and bet everything on it. In 2016, Son and Neumann met for the first time. They took a 12-minute walk through a WeWork office. According to reports, Son pulled out a napkin and did some math. Then he wrote Neumann a check for $4.4 billion. $4.4 billion after 12 minutes. Son later said, "In a fight, the craziest person wins. Adam is the craziest person I have met." He meant it as a compliment. With SoftBank's money, WeWork went into hyperdrive. They were opening new locations faster than any company in history, spending on everything: private jets, a wave pool company, a private elementary school, a company that made artificial wave pools. By January 2019, after another SoftBank investment, WeWork's private valuation hit $47 billion. For context, that was more than the market cap of Ford Motor Company, more than American Airlines, more than many companies with decades of profits behind them. A co-working space company founded 9 years earlier with a 12-minute pitch on a napkin was worth $47 billion. Nobody asked the obvious question: was the math actually real? In 2019, WeWork decided to go public, and that decision was the beginning of the end. To list on a stock exchange, a company must file an S-1, a detailed public document that discloses everything: revenue, losses, debt, who the executives are, what they're paid, every conflict of interest. On August 14, 2019, WeWork filed its S-1, and the financial world started reading. What they found was extraordinary. Problem number 1, the losses. In 2018, WeWork lost $1.9 billion on revenues of $1.8 billion. The company was spending more than $1 for every dollar it made, and the faster it grew, the more money it lost. Problem number 2. The business model was structurally broken. WeWork signed long-term leases, 10 to 15 years, meaning that on office buildings. Then it rented those spaces on monthly or annual contracts to members. If a recession hit and members left, WeWork still owed years of rent. The total future lease obligations in the S1? $47 billion. The same number as their valuation, except this $47 billion was money they owed, not money they were worth. Problem number 3. Adam Neumann. The S1 revealed that Neumann owned buildings that WeWork paid him rent to lease. He had personally trademarked the word "we" and then sold that trademark to WeWork, his own company, for $5.9 million. He had 20 times voting power over other shareholders, meaning he could never be removed. His wife was listed as the person who would choose his successor if he died. He had borrowed $500 million using his WeWork shares as collateral, then sold $700 million in stock before the IPO. In the business world, these are called conflicts of interest. Analysts had another word for them. What happened next was one of the fastest corporate collapses in modern business history. August 14th, S1 filed. Valuation implied at $47 billion. Within days, analysts, journalists, and investors were tearing the document apart. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Bloomberg. Every major financial outlet was running the same story. This company is not worth $47 billion. The marketed valuation began collapsing in real time, from $47 billion to $25 billion to $15 billion to $10 billion. Each number representing billions of dollars of imaginary value disappearing into thin air. September 4th. Neumann returns the $5.9 million trademark payment under pressure. September 13th, WeWork announces changes to governance. Too late. September 17th, the IPO is formally postponed. September 24th, Adam Neumann resigns as CEO. September 30th, WeWork withdraws its S1 entirely. 6 weeks. That is how long it took for $47 billion in perceived value to nearly disappear. SoftBank, which had invested over $10 billion into WeWork, stepped in with a $9.5 billion rescue package to prevent immediate bankruptcy. WeWork's valuation was set at under $8 billion, an 83% discount from the peak. Sun later told reporters he had been foolish with the WeWork investment. His Vision Fund's position in WeWork would eventually represent a loss of $16 billion, the single largest investment loss ever recorded by one fund on one position. And Adam Neumann? He received an exit package of $1.7 billion, $970 million for his shares, a $185 million consulting fee, $500 million in credit to repay his personal loans. The man who burned $47 billion in perceived value left richer than most people will ever be. WeWork filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on November 6, 2023, listing $18.6 billion in liabilities and only $15 billion in assets. The WeWork story is fascinating, but it is only useful if we extract the right lessons. Because this was not just about one eccentric founder. This was a systemic failure that involved some of the smartest investors, bankers, and business minds in the world, which means the lessons apply to almost everyone. Lesson 1. Story is not a business model. Adam Neumann was one of the greatest storytellers in business history. He convinced investors, employees, and even competitors that WeWork was a technology company with software-like margins. It was not. It was a real estate company with massive fixed costs and structurally thin margins. The story was so good that people stopped asking the most basic question. How does this company actually make money when it costs more than $1 to earn $1? In investing, in business, in personal finance, never let a compelling narrative replace basic math. Always ask, what are the actual numbers? Where does the money actually come from? What happens in a downturn? Lesson 2. Valuation is not value. WeWork was never worth $47 billion. It was priced at $47 billion by a single investor in a private transaction with almost no scrutiny. The difference between price and value is one of the most important concepts in finance. Price is what someone agrees to pay at a specific moment. Value is what an asset is actually worth, based on its underlying economics. When those two numbers diverge dramatically, and someone is working very hard to keep you from doing the math, that is a warning sign. Lesson 3. Governance matters more than most people think. Adam Neumann had 20 times voting power. He owned buildings he rented to his own company. His wife controlled succession. He was borrowing against company shares he had not yet sold. Each of these was a red flag that should have stopped investors from writing checks. None of them did, because the story was too good and the fear of missing out was too strong. Whether you are investing in a company, joining a startup, or entering a business partnership, understand who controls the entity, how decisions are made, and what happens if things go wrong. Governance is boring until it isn't. Lesson 4. The market is not always right, but eventually it is. For years, everyone who questioned WeWork's valuation was dismissed. Smart people, serious people, called them wrong. But the moment WeWork had to open its books to public scrutiny, the moment every investor could see the actual numbers, the illusion collapsed in 6 weeks. Public markets are imperfect, but they are remarkably good at one thing: eventually forcing the truth into the open. The companies and people who sustain long-term success are the ones who do not need a story to replace the math, because the math is already good enough. Postscript: WeWork still exists. After bankruptcy in 2023 and a restructuring in 2024, the company was acquired by Yardi Systems and continues operating in dozens of cities. The core idea, flexible office space, turned out to be genuinely valuable. It was the financial engineering around it that was not. And Adam Neumann, he has started a new real estate company called Flaw. Andreessen Horowitz gave him $350 million in funding. Apparently, the story is still a very good one. If you found this breakdown valuable, subscribe to Founders and Fortunes, because every week we pull apart the biggest business stories in history and extract the financial lessons hiding inside them. Next week, how Nokia went from the world's most dominant phone company to irrelevant in less than 10 years, and the one decision that made it inevitable. I'll see you there.